And sometimes too, a lot of people experience being told that their intuition's wrong. Like growing up and you have the gut feelings, or you know in your body that something's wrong and you're told to ignore it, or that you're completely wrong, or never say that again, or
Right.
you should never believe that. And so there's a lot of things, like just if we look, childhood, upbringing, all developmental years, all of that kind of influences the way that you trust or don't trust your intuition.
Great. Take it away.
Welcome back to another episode of Sessions for the Soul. We're going to be talking about how to listen to your intuition today. This is another one that we polled the community on our Instagram stories just to see what you guys wanted to cover. And there were some people who really resonated with this topic, and we're hoping to get our take on this. So that's what we're going to dive into today.
Yes, I'm so excited. I feel like this is a topic I get excited to talk about because it's like such a big part of trusting yourself and like self-worth. And a lot of people don't even know like what intuition is. And I think just diving into this whole concept will be really fun and helpful for people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, intuition, I think, again, I feel like we cover a lot of abstract topics. And this one feels kind of abstract sometimes because it's one of those where I think throughout this episode, we'll point to like you in some ways have to use like your discernment, and over time, it'll be more and more clear to you what, intuition is and what that gut feeling truly feels like for you versus something like anxiety. And so we'll just kind of walk through, what those things look like and how to maybe start to differentiate, how to tune into that, and, some skills to actually start building and exercising your intuition over time.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think like starting, like with the concept of like intuition versus anxiety, like you mentioned, like how do you know when it's intuition? Like what is intuition? And I think this can be hard to identify, especially if you do experience anxiety. And I feel like anxiety sometimes is like a secondary or like the third even like thought. Like the first initial kind of like knowing is usually the intuitive. But this is just from my own experience. Like I find the intuitive knowing comes through first, and then the questioning and the doubting ourselves is where the anxiety, the self-doubt, all of that comes in. So, like a good way to really like clarify for yourself if you're like, oh, is this my intuition? Is this anxiety? Is to like when posed with a situation or a question or whatever, just tuning in, like what was my first initial response? And kind of sitting with that and seeing how it feels and seeing like, does that feel really true? And then when the like, but or what, or, like what if, but what about this, all those things, the ifs, ands, whats, and buts pop in. Like those are the things to actually like pause and be like, okay, but this actually is like what is really coming through. And those were after I landed on that, like those things came in second. And again, like this is kind of an abstract thing. So that might not make any sense at all. But
Well, I think when I was going to therapy at the start of our marriage, my therapist was like, I was sharing different things that I was experiencing. And what was so helpful for me was to ask myself, like she recommended, like ask yourself, are those just anxiety thoughts? Or is that like a true like gut feeling about something that might actually be factual? And so I started to just exercise that, or to engage in that exercise of asking myself, like, is this just an anxiety thought, or do I have evidence for this? Like, do I have evidence that this thing might be true, or that I should make this decision in my life, or I should do this thing, or whatever it is. So I think sometimes it just comes from actually practicing it over and over, especially if you're someone who's listening who experiences anxiety. And it's really hard to differentiate between the anxiety thoughts or the anxiety feelings that you're having versus that strong gut feeling, like that inner knowing, that intuition that we all have, because the anxiety volume is turned up so loud. And so sometimes it's just that practice over and over and over again of asking yourself, is this just an anxiety thought, or is this truly my intuition that I should listen to here? And unfortunately, you're the only one who's truly going to know that answer. And that's so hard. And sometimes it can be helpful to, find someone that you really trust, be it a friend, a partner, a family member, a therapist, whatever it may be, and to actually run it by someone if you're going to kind of get into that practice where the anxiety is so loud in your life right now. It can be helpful to get some other people helping you out and helping you kind of discern what might be happening there.
Absolutely. And I think that like it really can be hard, like really empathizing with that, you guys, because if you have self-doubt at all, or if you struggle with self-doubt or like maybe lack trust a bit, which like I think is incredibly human, um, it can be really hard to like quiet the noise and get in tune with that and really clarify, and having those people that know you really well and are able to like recognize like, hey, I think, you know, this is something that I've noticed you do when you feel scared, when you're experiencing fear, when you're afraid of X, Y, and Z. Those kinds of things can really, like, for me, I'm thinking about how sometimes our brains like jump to like worst case scenario, or are so certain like that this thing is
Mm-hmm.
happening because we're afraid of rejection or we're afraid of vulnerability or whatever. And so like that mechanism of safety is like, this is happening, this is what's
Mm-hmm.
happening. And so like you had mentioned, like, having people getting some insight, having some help can be really good on discerning between the two. And also I think like a good, and we'll talk about this a little bit in tools, but like a good way to kind of sit with those things is stillness.
Mm-hmm.
Is like breathing and asking like, okay, is this true? What am I needing?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that also kind of um brings us into like this, like, well, yes, having some input can be really helpful. It's also really important to make sure whoever you're confiding in, or where you're seeking some help and discernment from, is like actually someone who knows you, who knows your experience, or is qualified to give that insight. And it's not just external noise, right? Like social media, or even like, I like to refer to them as the peanut gallery.
Mm-hmm.
Like that can be like family who just like loves to like give opinions, or friends who think they like really know our truth or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and making sure that like you're seeking advice from people who are aligned,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise some of that external noise like can not always be helpful, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, that's one of those things where you're going to have to really think about, like, really spend some time thinking about who you want those people to be, or where you're getting that information or that perspective from, because sometimes, like, there are a lot of people who have our best interest in mind. There are some people who don't, or some people who just like don't align with where you're at in life or where you're wanting to take your life. And so it can be, I just think it's a really important step to take, to actually really think about who it is that you're trying to invite in to question, is this my intuition? Or is this just anxiety? And on one of the thoughts that was coming up on anxiety, if you're having so much anxiety and it's so hard to tell, is this anxiety? Is this intuition? Is this something in between? The anxiety, if you start to take a step back and look at it through the lens of like, this is a protective mechanism. It's there because it's trying to keep me safe, because probably at some point in my life, I had to have like that hyper arousal of scanning for danger and playing out all the what ifs, all those scenarios, because that actually helped me stay safe, be it physically safe, emotionally safe, connected to my caregivers or people in my environment. So it's there, or it was there to serve a purpose, and now it's just overactive. And so if you're in a place in life where you no longer have to be anxious, it can be helpful to just remind yourself, like, oh, this served a purpose at one point. I can start to turn down the volume a little bit on that, and to really start to be still and tune into what I know to be true internally. Like, I just
Yeah.
know that this is true. And sometimes too, a lot of people experience being told that their intuition's wrong. Like, growing
Yes.
up and you have the gut feelings, or you know in your body that something's wrong, and you're told to ignore it, or that you're completely wrong, or never say that again, or you
Right.
should never believe that. And so there's a lot of things, like, just if we look, childhood, upbringing, all developmental years, all of that, that kind of influences the way that you trust or don't trust your intuition.
Absolutely. And like I'm having so many thoughts on that and I want to comment on it. But before I hop into that, just on the note of like the people we qualify and all of that, is some people can't see beyond their own experience as well. And so,
Mm-hmm.
if we're inviting someone into like help us discern something who is really got like only tunnel vision on their own reality, it's
Yeah.
going to be hard for them to be able to relate maybe or provide advice that like really pertains to us because they are so fixated on their own experience. So that's just a little note I wanted to add there. But to talk about like the disconnect that we experience in childhood, I think is so important because like when I started doing more like earth-based spirituality and learning from indigenous cultures, and um we'll use the term woo woo because that's what like everyone like the woo, like
Mm-hmm.
spirituality and whatever. It's like a little more out there, ethereal, a little more mythological in moments, if you will. um what I learned from a lot of those people is, and a lot of those elders and those teachers, is that like in Western culture in the last, like in the more modern, like industrial era specifically, we actually intentionally like have separated kids. We start separating kids from their intuition at a really young age, not from a place of like necessarily like, oh, we don't want our kids to have intuition, but because if we didn't separate from our intuition, like the modern world would be a lot harder to swallow, and it would be a lot harder
Mm-hmm.
to like handle this culture. And so like there's that piece of it, but also like understanding that how it starts, and I think how understanding like the roles that certain things play in that. And so like public school like process, or even private school, I don't know, I didn't go, I was a public school child, but like when in school we are told that like we have to ask permission and raise our hand to drink water, go to the bathroom,
Mm-hmm.
do these things that like from a young age we were taught, like you have to raise your hand, you have to ask to go
Mm-hmm.
to the water fountain, to go to the restroom, whatever. And if you're told no, like you have to hold it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually denying our body's mechanism that is telling our brain stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I know it seems like so simple when listening to it, but it actually makes a huge impact because we're actually teaching kids, like, don't listen to your body.
Yep.
We're teaching 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
no, 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 don't listen to your body, listen to me because I'm the authority.
Yep.
And so then like that actually creates huge conflict
Mm-hmm.
in kids, and as adults that carries over because we learn to literally disconnect from what our body, our inner knowing, or this
Mm-hmm.
like animal, like I don't even, is animal the right word? It's like this mechanism that like we're hardwired, designed for. We're taught like, no, 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 no,
Mm-hmm.
that's not correct, but the authority is correct.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to honor and not deny the authority, deny yourself, deny your body. And that's hugely problematic because when you're a kid, right, kids are like so intuitive and so in tune, and
Mhm.
they have such good instincts.
Mhm.
And when we start to like separate from that at a really young age, it's dangerous almost, because
Mhm.
that's when, you know, we open windows for abusers to come in, for that gut feeling of like, this person's not safe, which a lot of kids are really capable of tuning into. And adults,
Mhm.
we miss those cues. And then when, we have children come to us later in life, say like, well, this person in our life abused me, or this happened. And we're like, how did I miss it?
Mhm.
When maybe our kids came to us and said like, well, I mentioned that I don't feel safe, or I mentioned this thing. And it was like you mentioned, Kayla, like that concept of like, don't talk about that. No, ignore that. Like, that's just whatever.
Mhm.
And that is like a very real thing that goes on in the world.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of part of that separation that carries over. And even if you didn't experience like a big trauma like that, there
Mhm.
may be a scenario in which something littler did happen in that way, and then like the outcome was did inform the long-term behavior, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm thinking about how it's like the small little things that start to add up over time that communicate to us like don't listen to your own body, don't listen to your cues. You can wait, you can put it off. It's not that important. Listen to the authority. When you were mentioning like children and they're so intuitive, sometimes that shows up even as like, no, I don't want to hug this person. No, but you will hug them because they're family. And it's like, no, but like the child is listening to something, maybe, or maybe they're just being silly in that moment, but maybe not. Like, and so we over time have these experiences where we're being denied our own inner knowing, and that adds up over time. And then you find yourself in adulthood where you don't listen to your body's cues, where you're like, "Oh, I'm gonna put off eating because like I have all these things to do today, and or I have to take care of XYZ thing, or I'm not gonna take a break at work today, even though like I really need to and want to, but like I have all these things that I have to do." And that's part of, the conditioning that we're that we're talking about, is like setting ourselves up for this in adulthood, to get like maximum performance out of us. We don't listen to the cues for our need to rest. And so we find ourselves saying yes to things that we really don't want to say yes to. And
Mm-hmm.
so we find ourselves feeling so depleted and burnt out and exhausted and frustrated or angry or resentful. So, like, all these things start coming up on the other side of denying our intuition and denying ourselves actually honoring and listening to and responding to our body's cues and just the intuition, the inner knowing that we have.
Absolutely. And as you were saying that, I was also thinking about like the way that we end up, we can end up in relationships that like intuitively we might know like, um this person is not safe, or this isn't for me, or like we have that inner knowing that like this is never gonna work. But because of all of that informed, like that data that we've been gathering, or like
Mm-hmm.
the conditioning, that like will literally deny our intuition and our inner knowing, because it's like, oh well, I can make this work, or if I do X, Y, and Z, or we'll just stay in things that like simply aren't for us,
Mm-hmm.
because we're separated from that like inner knowing and that deeper connection to ourselves. When if we were more in tune to it and we nurtured it, right? Like, I mean, just imagine the
Mm-hmm.
world. Like, that'd be so cool,
Mm-hmm.
just to see for everyone kind of like what's it really like to like intuitively be in tune and like honor,
To be connected,
to
like
be
it's a
connected.
complete disconnection that we're being taught, from and taught and conditioned, implicitly or explicitly over time, that we just learn to like disconnect from our bodies, from our minds, from our emotional experience, from what we think is like safe versus unsafe, good, bad, whatever. And over time, we just become these kind of like disconnected beings that are just along for the ride.
Yeah. Or end up, like exactly along for the ride, or staying in places or in things way too long, way longer than we should have. Um in in order to just like, well, this is what I'm supposed to do, and not question and not like actually honor what's true for us. And so I think that that's like such an important thing that we touched on there with that, because especially like humans in general are incredibly intuitive. The I'd say like the most intuitive we are is in childhood, but like women, mothers, like women are incredibly intuitive creatures. And since this is like primarily, we have some male listeners, we love you.
Mm-hmm.
But like I would say like our audiences really are mostly women. It's like just to honor that like divine beauty that is womanhood, and like that knowing and like the worlds we hold within us. And of course men have those too, not denying that at all. But really like reflecting on that, and how culturally like I think we're kind of conditioned as women to kind of, well, I should get a more authoritative opinion, or talk to I should get insight elsewhere, and kind of how that can become troublesome when we're not like really, like we talked about, qualifying where we're getting that from,
Mm-hmm.
and we're outsourcing our intuition. And I think that like personally the slope, like the slippery slope that I've fallen in with this is like social media and the role that that plays with outsourcing intuition.
Mm-hmm.
um and like relying on, and we kind of talked about this last episode, like relying on other people's expertise to guide a decision, or to guide and inform our, like what path we're walking, um in order to like actually like know what's best for us. And so
Mm-hmm.
really wanting to just shine a light on the reality of like, maybe it's social media is where you get all your relationship advice,
Mm-hmm.
or where you go and seek that like mental health or that like expertise on everything, and recognizing like, is the advice you're taking in alignment with what you're desiring or what you're trying to cultivate, or is this just like there's so much noise in the world. And I totally get it, you guys, like sometimes to quiet the noise is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to like turn down the volume of like, in the age of information, because like there's so much information today, I feel like it
Mm-hmm.
gets so overwhelming sometimes when it's like, I'm struggling with this, whether that's like a health issue or relationship or whatever, or even just like deciding what's for dinner.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like, ugh, I don't know, there's so many choices, and I'm like very overwhelmed by options. I'm like work really well with like yes or no.
We have so many options presented to us all throughout the day. So, like, yeah, limiting those can be so
Exactly.
helpful.
It can, because then like you're actually able to tune in like, well, do you want this or do you want that, or is this true for you or is this true for you, and making it like yes or no versus, well, what do you want?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh my god, what do I want?
Mm-hmm. That
I
can feel so overwhelming.
It can totally. And so um and also like sometimes the peanut gallery being social media, like sometimes what is one person's experience, even though it might resonate, that doesn't have to be your experience. Like,
Mm-hmm.
just because the person you follow on TikTok said that like for her what worked, or for them what worked was X, Y, and Z, and how she got her relationship on track. Like, is that
Mm-hmm.
true for your partnership? Is that
Mm-hmm.
true for the person you know what I mean? Like things like that.
Yeah. Before we started recording, we were talking about like motherhood and pregnancy and childbirth and all of that on social media, and how I know we have a lot of moms who listen, or women who listen, who maybe are going to become a mom someday, and how we've both noticed, especially in that realm or that niche, and this applies to all niches, I'm sure, but for some reason my algorithm just seems real strong in this department, but how there's like really, really strong and polarizing beliefs on you should do XYZ thing in terms of how you manage your pregnancy or how you choose to give birth or any medical intervention, breastfeeding versus not, homeschooling versus not, etc. And if you're outsourcing your intuition to social media or specific accounts, like if you religiously follow certain accounts and you like take their, advice as the end all be all, you're you're not allowing yourself to actually get really honest about what kind of parent would you be without this influence of social media? What kind of partner would you be? How would you show up at your workplace? Like, who are you apart from the influence of all these external things? Who are you truly, and how do you really want to show up? And that's really hard if you're not willing to like give those things up for even a short period of time to really sit with like, yeah, what would feel good for me? If I find myself in this relationship or navigating this challenge, or find myself pregnant, or now that I'm in motherhood, what feels true for me, despite what everyone else is thinking or saying.
Absolutely. Yes. Like, I think that you just touched on the biggest part of it. And that's such a beautiful, like, point. Cause when we were talking about that too, it's like, it really is polarizing, and it also gets so conflicting. It can cloud our vision. And the key is tuning in and like actually, one, I think a lot of the time we don't get like the insight of like what's true for us until we're like walking the path. And so
Yeah.
like, if you're like gathering all this data right now that's like, oh, if I do this, I'm a bad mom, or if I do that, I'm not going to be like, it's going to be so traumatizing because this person had such a traumatizing experience in the hospital or whatever, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, to really like tune in, like, but wait, like, what actually feels true for me, and recognizing too that like that could change,
Yes.
because reality always happens.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we like set out with the intention to do one thing, and being able to like pivot or adjust
Mm-hmm.
accordingly to like what our experience is, and say like, oh, I really thought that this was what was true, and I like really like went down this path, and I really thought this would serve me, and I'm recognizing right now that it's actually really painful, or I don't have the capacity in this moment. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think that's a really important part of it, is like the tuning in and just listening and creating space for that. And obviously, like, yeah, we know that it's hard to do that sometimes, in seasons of life like
Mm-hmm.
pull us away, but that's one of those things where it's like, if you're in a place right now where you're like being faced with a decision, or you're struggling with knowing what's best for you, or a decision for your family, or your child, or in your partnership, or whatever it is, like being able to just take a moment to create some space and to really tune in, like, what's on my heart, and what's my why,
Yeah.
and what really feels like, would feel like the most true decision, or what's the outcome I'm desiring, and is this, is what I'm leaning towards supportive of that, or am I like so afraid of the outcome that like because that's another way to kind of discern like the anxiety piece, is like, because anxiety, yes, it's going to keep us, it's designed to keep us safe, but like maybe what we're desiring is actually like in the zone of not safety, in the zone of like trying something different that's out of our comfort zone and doesn't feel
Mm-hmm.
familiar and safe. Maybe it feels like, maybe it feels really scary. Maybe it feels like I'm gonna, like, I don't know if I can
Mm-hmm.
handle this, but like, is it supportive of what I'm trying to achieve? And if it is, then like that's actually probably a huge indication that that it's more aligned. And something that's coming to mind too is like, if something has been put on your heart so much and you keep coming back to it, that's intuition. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if you keep coming back to this thing, and no matter how you do mental gymnastics to
Mm-hmm.
justify, to stay, to whatever, to alter, like, no, I'm going to keep trying, or no, like I have to stay in this because of this, that, the other, or like whatever objections your brain is giving you. If it is continually on your heart,
Mm-hmm.
that is intuition. Like if it keeps coming like to that place of like, I don't know if, you know, the example I'm going to use is like relationships. Like, I don't know if I can do this, or I don't know if this is for me. If it keeps coming back to that and it's been put on your heart so much that, like, even if you're like, no, I love him, I'm going to stay. No, like, we can work on this. If it keeps being put on your heart that you deserve better, or you can't do this, or this doesn't feel good, that is your sign.
Mm-hmm.
That is all the information you need, girl.
Even if it sucks, right? Like sometimes like the intuition that we have or the gut feeling that we have might also be met with anxiety or grief or sadness or pain or whatever it may be. And so that's the part I think that can be so challenging is like, oh, my intuition is telling me like I need to make this move. I need to make this decision. I need to end this or start this or pivot in this area of my life. And I'm really scared to do that. Like there's so much anxiety because it's so unfamiliar and it's a new thing that I've never done before. And so I think that's the part that can be really challenging to actually tune into the intuition, recognize that, yes, this is my gut feeling. Yes, this is my inner knowing, my intuition. And it's uncomfortable. Like it's really hard. And so I think that's where it can be helpful to link arms with someone or to have someone, walk with you through that process of like, this is what my intuition is telling me I need to do. And it's actually really hard, or I'm nervous about it, or whatever it is. Can you walk with me through this or
Mm,
encourage me or support me or just like tell me like, I'm doing the right thing. So
yes.
that's really, I think, important to know too, because I think sometimes like listening to your intuition can sound like it's just going to be met with like rainbows and butterflies. And that's not always the case.
No, it's literally not. Yeah, can confirm that, you guys. Like, can confirm. No, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that's like that's reality, is that like sometimes what is meant for us is, you know, is the hard part, is the difficult decisions, and like that's part of the human experience. And sometimes it's like invitations are to like really do the hard thing, like lead to the greater thing, right?
Yeah.
And open the door and create the space for the greater thing. But in the moment, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I'm going to die. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's like such a real thing. I think sometimes it like sounds dramatic, but I think we all can relate to like a decision, or uh being faced with like a situation where like the choice we had to make, or that was like truly what was best for us, felt
Mm-hmm.
like I'm going to throw up and die right now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I can't do this. Like I cannot handle it. And exactly, having those people in your corner to just be with you, because the reality is there are so many messy parts of life. Grief is messy, heartbreak is messy, like all of those things can be really messy and really hard to hold, especially on your own. And when you try to do it on your own, sometimes like our brain, our
Mm-hmm.
brain can be such an enemy, like in some of those cases, because I think I was listening to a Mel Robbins podcast about, she had this doctor on, and I don't particularly remember all of it. You guys will, the more you are on this journey with us, the more you're going to realize like Alicia happens to like remember so much random shit, but like the details of it, no.
You remember the
I remember the
essence.
essence. I remember the lesson and the core of it,
Mm-hmm.
what was said, or what the like, no, I'm not a detail oriented person. And I'm quite chaotic. However, the essence of the message was that like when our brains don't have, like, our brains kind of need things to be working on, to solve, to like, we like to have like challenges in ways. And when we don't have challenges, or when we're like in the on the other side of a challenge, right? So like maybe we quit the job or left the relationship and we're on the other side of it. Okay, now I don't have a challenge necessarily or a
Mhm.
project or something. So then our brain actually like turns, oh, I'm the project.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm the thing. And then what will happen is occasionally we can backtrack. We can be like, oh, I actually I shouldn't have done this because of all this evidence I have now, and because like I've had idle time, and also like the element of fear can play a role in that, of like, okay, I did this scary thing,
Mhm.
and then like, just wait, was that right? And
Mhm.
here's what I can tell you is, if you did the scary thing in the first place, it probably was right. And no matter how much doubt or um how much you want to backtrack, or like however much evidence your brain is showing you, like, see, you shouldn't have done this,
Mhm.
um you probably should have. Yeah, you definitely should have. And sitting through that discomfort,
Mhm.
that's where the like magic happens, right?
Mhm. Yeah, I'm thinking of how like Brene Brown talks about the vulnerability hangover, and it's a little tangential, but the same concept of like, sometimes when we listen to our intuition and it is one of those times where it's like, yeah, I intuitively know I have to do this thing that sucks. And then you do the thing that sucks and is really painful or hard or, met with a lot of anxiety. And then you're like, oh my God, did I do the right thing? Like you have the hangover effect of doing the hard thing, doing the vulnerable thing, doing the thing that feels painful or really scary. And I think those are the times where, like you mentioned, our brain sometimes like goes into overdrive to try and walk everything back and to be like, oh, let's clean up that mess, that emotional mess that we just created, instead of actually being able to just be in the moment and experience, all the difficult or painful emotions that go along with the decision that was made or the thing that happened in your life.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Girl, I had one of those yesterday. And literally, like, it's so real. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it is so real to have that hangover,
Yeah.
and to question, like, oh no, because nobody wants to sit. I mean, like, as much as I really think grief is a beautiful part of the human experience, it's not comfortable.
No.
It is not comfortable to sit in like the reality sometimes of like what was best for us. And that hangover, oh, it can be so hard, and it can be so uncomfortable and painful. And so, you know, I think it's another one of those places, which I know we've talked about this before and we'll talk about it a million times, because I think it's sort of a theme for the human experience, but it's like really getting comfortable in the uncomfortable moments,
Mm-hmm.
like that, like being able to surrender and say, like, yeah, this fucking sucks and my
Mm-hmm.
heart hurts so bad. And like, I I like think about the feeling of like when you're heartbroken, or when your heart just hurts, or like you're really sad and in pain. And like when you wake up in the morning, how like you open your eyes and you're kind of like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that happened. That's real. And like
Mm-hmm.
it, all the emotion
Mm-hmm.
is like still present, and you just feel heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not a great feeling.
Mm-hmm.
But to move through it and to process it and allow the healing to occur, and like become yourself again, so that you actually can honor and live the life that like you're meant to be living,
Yeah.
because these hard decisions are actually meant for us as well. They wouldn't be happening if they weren't meant for us to go through, or there wasn't medicine
Yeah.
in the experience.
Absolutely. One of the things we wanted to touch on was some of the skills for listening to your intuition. And I think that's an amazing skill to start with, is actually like when you're in the painful moments and when you're in, any sort of emotion that feels uncomfortable or body sensation that feels uncomfortable, depending on what emotion you're experiencing, you can maybe feel that more intensely in your body, but to be able to just sit with it and to actually like allow it to exist within you and to recognize it and to honor it and to notice how it starts to move through. Because I think sometimes when we have those experiences, we have a tendency to want to either avoid it, to numb it out through all sorts of mechanisms that you can, choose to numb your emotions with, rather than to actually fully be with it and to just allow it and to recognize this isn't going to be forever. Like the painful experience that I'm in right now, or the uncomfortable experience that I'm in, is not going to last forever. It's temporary. Everything is temporary, even though in the moment it doesn't always feel that way. So I think
Mm.
that's a good place to start for people who are, looking for some tools on how to actually tune in.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we mentioned like already in this episode, like the literally like the stillness of tuning in. And that's a great skill of like getting quiet, putting your phone away, sitting down, taking some deep breaths and really like tuning in, like what's my body feeling? Like,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like exploring each scenario in the sense of like, okay, what does it feel like? Fear aside, like what's it feel like if I really hold this decision? What's it feel like if I do hold this decision, and kind of like sitting with both of those and seeing what comes up for you and like what that experience is like. And then um, you know, being able to like reflect and kind of move through and like sit with whatever is being brought up in your physical being, and recognize like the thoughts that come in as well, and start to tune into those. I mean, one of my favorite tools is like the little, it's so simple and it's way less heavy, you guys, because I feel like this has been like heavy unintentionally. We're
I
just
know.
like,
We're going in a heavy
we're
direction.
like literally gonna be crying soon. I'm just kidding, but like it is kind of, there's a heaviness to some of this because I feel like intuition like does come in heavier moments. It's not like my intuition told me to go shopping, or like my intuition told me to like go have this really fun like time. It's like, no, sometimes our intuition's a little bit more like
Mhm.
about the deeper stuff, I guess. I mean, it can play a role in that other stuff. Like intuitively, I knew I needed to call someone or like whatever. Like,
Mhm.
those moments, those like sort of serendipitous moments of like, uh, I just had the feeling I should reach out. And then the person being like, I'm so glad you reached out. I was just like,
That's such a good point to bring up. Yeah. I
you
did that
know,
the other day where I checked in with someone because I hadn't heard from someone in a while, and I was like, what's going on? Is everything
you
okay? And then I
good.
checked in, and then they were like, wow, you must have, like, your little spidey senses, aka intuition, is like must have just been like going off because this person is, needing some extra support, needing some checking in on. And so
Yeah.
listening to that, like, it's, yes, it's the heavy stuff, and yes, it's also those things of like when you get that feeling, or like that fleeting thought that's like, oh, you should do this, or you should reach out to this person, or say this thing, or give
Yeah.
this person a compliment, and it just like makes their entire day. Like, those things also matter. And I think sometimes just exercising those little pieces of intuition, or moments of intuitive messaging, and you'll start, it's kind of like exercising that muscle, like
Yeah.
strength training your intuition. And over time you'll start learning how to listen to the bigger forms of intuition as well, when you start noticing the little wins that
Uh,
you get.
yes, absolutely. And that's exactly like the tool I was going to. It's like that concept, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like the little things. So like the one of the concepts is kind of like, those thoughts where it's like, did I lock the door? Did I turn off the oven? Did
Yeah.
I, oh shoot, did I do that? Like whatever it is, insert thing here, that like those are the things that like we as humans you know, have those like moments, because sometimes we're not fully present when we're doing things,
Mm-hmm.
and going and check, like go check. I had a therapist who told me that, who was like, go check,
Mm-hmm.
because the thing is like you're gonna get information either way. You're either gonna get information that, oh no, that was my anxiety, I did lock the door, I did turn off the oven,
Yep.
or you're gonna go and see, I didn't turn off the oven. And both are good information because you can start to recognize and discern between the two. Like,
Yeah.
okay, this time that I did go check and I didn't do the thing that I needed to do,
Yeah.
um, it felt like this.
Yeah.
it like was like, oh, like the light bulb went off,
Mhm.
versus like I did go check and I actually had locked the door, and it felt more, a little bit more like anxiety. It felt a little bit more like, oh,
Mhm.
like it felt more, had a quality of like doubt maybe, or questioning, and being able to tune into those things. That's a like great way to exercise it, because um what we're doing is we're like actually allowing messaging to come through to us, and we're actually allowing our brain to like deliver information, and that messaging to like, to not ignore it, essentially, to not deny it. Go to the bathroom when you have to go to the bathroom. Like, I know that's so silly, but seriously, honoring our bodily functions when they
Mhm.
come up, whether that's drinking water, going to the bathroom, like needing food,
Mhm.
prioritizing those things, because we're actually like supporting our holistic health, our
Yeah.
mechanism that is. And like Kayla mentioned, it's like exercising the muscle, and those small wins that over time like really do build this like greater,
Mhm.
this greater like tuning in.
Mhm. Yeah, listening to the bodily cues throughout the day, I think, is so important. It's those little things of when I need to use the bathroom and hunger cues and when I need to rest, and just listening to those things, honoring those, responding to them is so important. And oh gosh, where was I going with that? Oh, doing extra things, like if you like to tune into your body further, you can do things like physical movement, like yoga if you're looking for something more gentle, or stretching, or you can do weightlifting, like doing things that engage your body, where you're tuning into, how does this feel in my body? How does it feel in my body when I'm lifting weights? How does it feel when I'm laying in shavasana and resting? Where's the energy going? How's it moving? How's it showing up? What's the quality? Putting colors and textures, and like you can get as
Yeah.
crazy with it as you want.
Yes.
And that's super helpful, because what you're doing is you're training your body. It's the part of your brain, it's called interoception, where you're literally tuning into the physical experience. We take in so much external stimuli throughout the day. We rarely tune inward to take in that internal stimuli, the internal like communication or messaging that's happening in our body. And so just getting into some sort of a practice, a movement practice, maybe a breath work practice, meditation if you like meditation, sitting and journaling, whatever that looks like for you. But being able to actually take some time, and maybe for you at the beginning, if it's like a totally unfamiliar practice, you have to do like a dedicated practice. Like, I'm going to
Yeah.
take 5 to 10 minutes today and do this thing, and to start training, my mind and body to actually be present with the experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And like that also brings me to the thought about like the anxiety portion of it, of like getting out of your head and into your body really helps quiet anxiety, and helps kind of create like a safe space for you to exist in your body, and to tune into that physical experience, and how they are really so different. Like our mental experience and our physical experience can be
Mm-hmm.
so different. And a great way to kind of like, if you're not really used to getting into your body, like Kayla mentioned, the movement, and also like that, like a body scan, like an
Mm-hmm.
exploration scan, like where you're sitting still, you're like starting at one, like your toes, and moving all the way up to the head, or head to toes, like whatever way that goes, but like really going like, sort of like part by part, piece by piece, and tuning in, like what is this part of me feeling like, what is this part of me feeling like, and going up and seeing like, oh, I'm actually holding like a lot of tension in my hip,
Mm-hmm.
or my knee is like really like hurting. But when we're like so kind of going through the motions all day, or like just not really like fully in our bodies, it's really easy to disconnect from that. So
Mm-hmm.
that ties into everything Kayla was just saying about like that physicality, and like really getting into the body, and kind of quieting the brain, I think is a great way to do it. Yeah.
There's this like a set of DBT skills of basically that, like tuning into the body in a way where you don't think about how your toes are feeling right now, or like what, I think it guides you through like what the hair on your head feels like and the feeling of your tongue in your mouth right now, how the air feels as it like goes through your nose, down your throat and into your lungs. Like those little things, like how your eyes feel that when like the air is touching your eyes. Like we don't think about any of that. And so sometimes getting like that granular and specific can be really helpful just to create like that mindful awareness if you're in a place where you're so disconnected from your
Mm-hmm.
body. And it can feel weird to do that. Like it can feel really weird and unfamiliar to be like, what do you mean you want me to focus on how my hair feels? Like, well, just try it. Like, just try it
Seriously.
out and see how it goes, because the mindful awareness that you'll start to carry with you throughout everyday moments will be like so different. It'll be a night and day difference.
Absolutely. I think mindfulness is such a important part of intuition and
Mm-hmm.
tuning in and also just presence, because overall, right? Like desire, like I think our, you know, like we've talked about time and time again, is like living more present lives, like having more presence, awareness, being more connected, a more connected way of living. Like this all cultivates that whole greater picture,
Yeah.
and this ties into that. And so like even if you're listening to this and like maybe you're like, okay, yeah, I want to tune into my intuition, but also like I just want to tune in general,
Mm-hmm.
these are all great tips for that, because we are a whole mechanism. We're not individual parts like parceled out into this like body.
Yeah.
And so really holding the whole of us and the whole that we are in that is
Mm-hmm.
part of that more like mindful, connected, grounded, holistic approach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the overall messaging here, and really I feel like a theme for this whole podcast, is like just inviting greater presence and awareness and mindfulness and like the ability to just be still and tune inward and to try and like try to turn down the volume of the external world, because there's so much going on, and it's like the more that you let in, the harder it is to gain clarity on what your current experience is and where you want to take things in your life. So I think that, you know, really summarizes like this concept of intuition is having that presence, having that awareness, and just being still. And sometimes outsourcing and asking other people. That's okay too.
Absolutely, exactly. And the more you do it, the easier it all gets, and the more you can feel into all of it, like what's true, what's coming up. All of that becomes more and more accessible the
Mm-hmm.
more that you do it. Exactly. Listen, I outsource like crazy. You guys, I outsource like crazy. If we've ever had a personal conflict or, you know, been in relationship, do know I have screenshotted that and sent it to my sister 110%. She is part of my PR team and helps me cultivate responses. And some of you who have received unhinged responses from me are thinking you should get a new PR team. But that's part of our charm. That is part of our charm. But
Yes.
no, hilarious. I'm so sorry I derailed there. But yeah, I think that like, um, I really think that that's like, that sort of sums up so much of this. And also like, we are on theme lately, and it I feel like the thread that is the whole ethos of this podcast like continues to weave itself through all of our episodes, because really
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day that's like what it is, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. More
Yeah.
presence, friends. More presence, more curiosity, more mindful awareness. That's like
Yeah,
the whole vibe here.
connected living and like more authentic living
Mm-hmm.
and happiness. Like I just feel like we want to help people be more connected and happy,
Mm-hmm.
because you know, like you said, the noise of the world, it's so much sometimes. And so just quieting all of
Mm-hmm.
that, like it's crazy when you were talking about like tuning into the parts of our body, like our hair, but we're literally taking in information there all day. Like we're
Mm-hmm.
taking in information in our eyes and how things
Mm-hmm.
feel. We're just not conscious of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, you know, like that in itself, yeah, we all need to tune in a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We need more of that. Anything else on intuition?
No. Oh, you know what? One thing. When you ignore your intuition, like tune into that and recognize what that felt like and what the
Yeah.
results of that were. And we could do like a whole other thing on this, I'm sure. But like, another way to like build that muscle is to recognize what happens when you ignore it. And
Hmm.
uh yeah. I
Use that
mean,
as information.
exactly, that's information. That's all I'll say on that. Listen, we all probably have some data on that in our
On
lives.
ignoring intuition,
Yeah,
for
ignoring
sure.
that gut feeling and then like what it
Yep.
led to. So that is information that helps build
Hmm.
evidence and helps us tune in because it's like, oh, I denied you
Hmm.
and now I'm experiencing this. But if
Hmm.
I would have honored you, we could have,
Hmm.
and trusting that like that was actually probably a lesson you had to learn in order to tune in more. So
Hmm. Very true. Yeah, there's data in it all.
absolutely. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. And we absolutely love having you here on this journey with us. And don't forget to like and follow us on all the things. Follow us on Instagram, especially if like engaging with us and giving your feedback on what you want to hear or, just a little reminder that if you have any questions or coaching you'd like that you can write into us and we are here to answer those questions and you can do it anonymously. So, no pressure on having your experiences or situations aired out on our podcast.
Hmm.
We want to honor your privacy.
Amazing. Well, thank you guys, and we will see you next week.
Yes, thank you so much.